Hi folks, today I want to share with you 6 tips and tricks that have helped me personally become a better medical writer. These are all tips that I've picked up over more than 8 years of working as a health economist in the pharmaceutical industry. During those 8 years, I was working both as a consultant and later for a pharma company directly, always with a focus on market access. These consulting and pharma roles in market access have allowed me to write countless dossiers, which got submitted to health technology assessment bodies across multiple geographic regions. When I was first tasked with writing such dossiers, I knew very little about medical writing apart from what I've learned in university. And luckily though for me, I had several great colleagues that have taught me a lot and have helped me improve my medical writing. Now, without further ado, here are my 6 tips that have helped me and will hopefully help you as well become a better medical writer. If you stick around until the end of this video, I'll even share one more bonus tip with you. Now, jumping straight in, tip number 1 is know your audience. Good medical writing, just like any other good writing, always starts with the reader in mind. Understanding your audience allows you to create a message that not only resonates with them, but you can also tailor your content so you can ensure that you address their specific needs and interests. Even in a narrow field such as medical writing, there are different recipients with different backgrounds. Let me show you what I mean by this by giving you 3 examples of different recipients of your medical writing. Example 1 is patient education materials. When creating such educational brochures for patients, understanding their health literacy, language proficiency and cultural background is essential. For instance, a pamphlet on diabetes management should use simple language, visual aids and culturally relevant examples to ensure patients fully understand how to manage their condition. Next, let's consider scientific manuscripts for our example 2. For manuscripts targeting medical professionals and researchers, the writing can include technical language, detailed methodology and complex data analysis. Knowing that the audience has a high level of expertise allows the writer to delve deeply into scientific concepts and data without oversimplifying, which would be inappropriate for this type of audience. Lastly, example 3 is a regulatory submission document. When preparing such regulatory submission documents, you're writing to a regulatory body like the MHRA in the UK, the EMA in Europe, or the FDA for the US. These bodies have specific guidelines and requirements for the information a pharma company needs to provide. Understanding that the audience comprises regulatory reviewers ensures that the content meets their expectations for not only accuracy, but also compliance and scientific rigor, which will ultimately facilitate the approval process. As you can see from these 3 examples, knowing your audience is crucial for medical writers because it shapes how information is conveyed to ensure clarity, relevance, and engagement with your readers. Tip number 2 is to keep it simple. Medical writing can get very complicated very quickly. As medical writers, we deal with hard to explain biochemical processes, often in a disease area which is not fully understood yet. And I absolutely get it. You did all the research and you want to showcase that in your clinical writing. And you definitely should. However, try to challenge yourself to keep your message simple. I find that this is often more challenging than not optimizing your writing for simplicity, as it requires you to have a deep understanding of the subject matter you're explaining to your audience. Simplicity in medical writing is crucial though, as it has various benefits for the reader. For example, simple writing is easier to read and remember. If you use complex messages, it requires more cognitive effort from your readers and potentially causing them to not being able to absorb or even forget what you've written about. Additionally, clear, simple, and straightforward language focuses the reader's attention on the content rather than confusing them with jargon or convoluted sentences. For tip number 3, it's to tell a story. Everyone loves a good story. Whether this is a fantasy novel like Harry Potter or medical writing, that it doesn't really matter. When we read a good story, we're just simply more engaged, captivated, and connected to the characters and the contents of that story. So, in good medical writing, a good story will captivate readers and make complex medical information more accessible and more memorable to a wider audience. The question is, how can we tell a story through our medical writing? Luckily, there are often frameworks which we can rely upon depending on the type of medical writing we produce. So for scientific publications, for example, this framework is one that I'm sure many of you will already be familiar with. It's called the IMRAD framework, which is an acronym that stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. The IMRAD structure, which is the most used standard in today's health science, was initially introduced and used in the 1940s, then later gained traction in the 1970s and was the only adopted pattern in original research articles in the 1980s, according to a publication in the Journal of the Medical Library Association, which I will link to in the video description down below. Adhering to the IMRAD structure already provides you with the flow of the story you need to tell for scientific publications. You start by providing a short and precise introduction, clearly laying out the methods which were used to conduct your analysis and report your results, and discuss your findings in the light of the available evidence. For other types of medical writing, you can also consider organizing facts into a narrative, such as describing a patient's journey through diagnosis, treatment, and recovery, which allows writers to highlight key points in a logical and compelling way. This approach turns dry data into a meaningful context that captures attention and helps readers, whether they are patients, healthcare professionals, or regulators, better grasp and retain the information. Good medical writers should always tell a story, because storytelling makes complex information more understandable and also more engaging. So, as for my tip number 4, it's to double check your spelling and grammar. I think that the easiest way to lose a reader is by having a manuscript filled with spelling and grammar mistakes. Spelling and grammar mistakes causes readers to stumble over those errors, and it also immediately induces a cause for concern regarding the entire credibility of your work. So therefore, every time you have finished your manuscript, make sure that you at least use basic spell checkers to review your document. The built-in editor in Word is a good starting point to get rid of simple spelling mistakes. You can also use specialized software for this review step, like Grammarly or ProWritingAid, for example. And I must say at this stage, I'm not sponsored by any of the two software providers in any way, but I can really recommend ProWritingAid, as I've used it extensively myself, and I'm really happy with the software. On top of checking for any spelling and grammar mistakes, make sure that you don't use inconsistent writing in your manuscript. Don't get tempted by the thought of enhancing your work by using synonyms and convince yourself to instead stick with the wording you had introduced initially. Using consistent wording will make your document more transparent and easier to follow for the reader, and thus eliminating any guesswork that could be introduced by the use of synonyms. Error-free spelling, grammar, and consistency is so important, as it not only maintains professional credibility and ensures clear communication, but it also prevents potential legal and regulatory issues. In a medication guide, for example, a typo changing 0.1 milligram to 1 milligram could result in a tenfold overdose, and therefore potentially leading to severe adverse effects for patients. Ensuring accuracy through meticulous proofreading therefore really helps prevent such dangerous errors. Tip number 5 is to follow style guidelines. Every scientific journal has its own style guidelines, which need to be followed if you want your manuscript to get accepted. And depending on the discipline that you work in, journals might prefer a certain style. In medicine, commonly used styles include the one developed by the American Medical Association, AMA for short, the American Psychological Association style, or APA style, or the Chicago menu style. While the AMA, APA, and Chicago menu style are commonly used, it's always worth it to check the requirements of the journal that you're submitting to. For example, 3 of the most influential journals in medicine, the British Medical Journal, the Lancet, and Nature, all have their own style guidelines published online. I've included links to these style guides in the video description down below if you want to explore them in more detail. Following style guides is so important because they ensure consistency. A lack of consistency in your medical writing can irritate your reader, even if they don't consciously notice those style inconsistencies. Using a consistent style throughout your document therefore ensures clarity, ease of navigation for the reader, accuracy, professionalism, and also avoids any kind of ambiguity. Tip number 6 is to use reference management software. I still get very surprised every day when I come across medical documents which have references in them that were manually edited, rather than using automated reference management software. If you're not using reference management software already, using software like EndNote or Citavi, or even free software like Zotero will make your life so much easier, trust me. There are so many benefits why you should be using reference management software. Not only will these tools save you a lot of time compared to manual referencing, but they also ensure consistent formatting throughout your document, while also giving you the flexibility to switch between reference styles as needed. And furthermore, you can automatically import references into your reference library and even collaborate with team members using shared data libraries to optimize your workflow if you work for a company. If you're not using reference management software, I'd heavily encourage you to pause the video here and install one now. Since you've made it to the end of the video, here's the one more bonus tip I've promised you earlier, and that is write as much as you can. If I had to pick one tip that's going to make you a better medical writer, then it's got to be this one. Writing a lot and writing a lot consistently will make you a much better medical writer. In medical writing, we often obsess over the quality of our deliverables, and considering that our writing has the potential to affect actual patients in the real world when physicians make treatment decisions based on our publications, we of course should do our very best to ensure high quality of the materials that we produce and publish. There is this compelling story of a pottery teacher that is described in a book called Art and Fear, written by David Bales and Ted Orland. And in this story, the pottery teacher conducts an experiment in which he separates his class into two groups. He tells the first group that they will be marked solely based on quantity of the work that they produce. And then he goes on to tell the second group that they will be marked based on the quality of the work. So they only need to produce one pot, essentially. And then later, when it comes time to grade the work of the two groups, it turns out that all of the pots with the highest quality come from the group that only focused on quantity and not on quality. So medical writing, of course, can't be compared to pottery like for like, I know that. But I think there's still a valuable lesson to be learned from that story. And other famous online writers like Nicholas Cole, for example, talk about this as well, so that you always need to produce a lot of quantity of writing first in order to get to the good stuff. Take the story of the pottery class as an encouragement to write more, because ultimately I think writing more is what will improve your writing most significantly. If you've liked this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss out on my latest videos. I'll cover a variety of topics related to the consulting industry and the pharmaceutical industry in general, or from the perspective of a health economist who's worked in the industry for years. If that's what you're looking for here on YouTube, then you come to the right place, and I'll see you in the next video.